We're gonna do the Giannis drink. Apparently, Giannis likes to drink lemonade mixed with Sprite.
And let me have a large drink, no ice, half Sprite, half lemonade.
So we'll be doing a taste test to see if this actually is an elite drink and will make me an NBA MVP Finals player. Ooh, okay, there we go. It's always good when the Sprite is fizzy. So as I mentioned, he says he likes to drink lemonade with Sprite, no ice. Heavy emphasis on the ice. So let's see what it tastes like. Huh, not bad. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Comeback Sports Podcast. I'm your host, AJ, and this is Season 3, Episode 2. We got a jam-packed filled episode as usual. We got an NBA Finals analysis, Team USA losing their first basketball game for the Olympics, Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC Conference, and a Space Jam movie reveal. So stick around and see what's up. Now for your quote of the week. The only time you should look back in life is to see how far you have come. What does that quote mean to me? It's very interesting that this is a Kevin Hart quote. I don't usually see him as a guy that kind of has very inspiring quotes. But what it means is we like to look back on things, whether it's good or bad things in our life or kind of the nostalgia feel. Kind of refers to a quote I did before, kind of the same kind of theme or message. But we shouldn't dwell in the past. If we look back, we should be looking at, how far we've come in terms of success, whether it's starting really early in your career where you're just like an errand boy or an intern and now you moved up and you are a manager or someone that's just very proud of what they accomplished so far. Or the same applies to your sports. If like you can never, shoot a good 3-point shot, and then over time you practice and you're one of the best shooters in your team. And like I think looking back at it, you kind of realize that it's not about where you finish. It's just you got to look back on what the journey was and how much you progress, and it makes the experience way more enjoyable. So some new things going on. I got my MRI results back, and apparently I ruptured my quad. I'm actually surprised I heard that, but I'll be going to a specialist and see what kind of treatment they'll give me. Maybe some PT, hopefully nothing surgical related. Nothing too exciting besides that. I came back from my hometown. I watched the Big 7. If you're from Davenport, it's a big race. My girlfriend did it for the first time, and she had a real good time, so I'm happy for her. Some recent news. LeBron James reaches $1 billion. He's the first active NBA player to do that. He has earned $330 million through salary earnings and $700 million through endorsements, merchandising, licensing, and media. I mean, it's no surprise to me. He's a very marketable person, and he has lots of business ventures, which includes movies, which I will get onto later in the episode. Let's see. So let's kind of jump right into the NBA Finals. The NBA Finals, they concluded last week. The Milwaukee Bucks beat the Phoenix Suns in a Game 6 at Milwaukee. It was huge, big deal. Lots of people were outside in the Deer District, which is kind of like a watch party outside of their stadium. And it was just really exciting. I'm happy for the city of Milwaukee. It's a pretty great town. I like it. So let's kind of just break it down by why the Phoenix Suns lost, how come Milwaukee won, and kind of talk about Giannis' story, the Greek Freak. So Phoenix lost games 4 and 5 from costly turnovers late in the game from Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And it was just unfortunate to see that because in Game 5 they were 68% from the three, but it just goes to show that anything can really happen. You got to be in your best game, and late in the game is kind of obviously the most important part of the game. In the 4 games that the Phoenix Suns lost, there was only one game where they had two players with 20-plus points. So you can't just have one player carrying your team, especially in the finals. You got to have more than just one person. And Game 3 was kind of the worst game, in my opinion, for the Phoenix Suns. They had a really bad shooting slump. They were 29% from from the three-point line, and that was out of 31 attempts. So they obviously just cannot crack a shot. In my opinion, I think DeAndre Ayton should have been on Giannis more, especially if he's on the court just dominating everybody. They should have kind of kept Frank Kaminsky, who's obviously not a starter. He's just a small role player. They should have kept him and used his height at the rim to kind of at least make an attempt to slow down Giannis, whoever was going to the rim. But I understand why they kind of didn't go that approach. He's not the most athletic person if you've ever seen him play. But overall, the Phoenix Suns were the better shooting team across the entire series. They're very consistent at the free throw line as well. But I want to give a shout out to a few players, including Jay Crowder, who's the most consistent of the top 5 scorers. He led the Suns in steals and had the second best defensive rating. Devin Booker, who's a superstar in the making, I think he's kind of already at that level now he's had his first playoff appearance. He had 3 30-point games, and 2 of them were over 40. He almost had 4 30-point games. I think it was game 2 or 3 where he had 27 points. I do kind of bash on Chris Paul a little bit in this series. I feel like he was a little underwhelming, but I want to say that he had a sensational game 1. He played like it was his last game of the season, which unfortunately he just didn't have that kind of same game throughout the rest of the series. On that game 1, he dropped 32 points and 9 assists. DeAndre Ayton, even though I was bashing him earlier as well, I want to say he is a force to the rim. He had a big jump this year from his rookie year, and he led the team in rebounds, and so I think he's going to be someone to look out for in the upcoming seasons. Let's kind of transition over to the Bucks and kind of on why they won. I'll start with Chris Middleton. He's been a nice surprise, but I also want to give some credit to Drew Holiday, who had great games in games 3 and 5. Sure, having Chris and Giannis is great. They are two all-stars. Giannis is obviously the superstar of the team, but I kind of realized that you kind of need that third person, and Drew Holiday was that guy for games 3 and 5, and the Suns just couldn't really do anything with him kind of disrupting their flow. But back to Chris Middleton, he was the second leading scorer, and he was a good defensive piece because him and Drew Holiday were the leaders in steals for the Bucks. And speaking of defensively, this team was just far more elite, and they had the size that I mentioned in my previous episode. I mentioned like Milwaukee's real slow in the beginning of the series with the Nets, but they always kind of reach back up, and they got that big size coming from these big guys that they have, and I think by games 3, they learned how to use it properly against the Suns. But the main star of this entire series was Giannis, the Greek Freak. Giannis averaged 35 points and 13 rebounds across the entire series. That's unbelievable numbers. I think LeBron put 35 one series, I think, with Cleveland. But regardless, just how offensively dominant he was, especially the rim, was just amazing. In Game 6 is probably the most highlighted game of that series. He played like it was like a Game 7. Like if he didn't put the most amount of points that they were going to lose. He dropped 50 points along with 17 rebounds and 6 blocks. He was essentially bullying Devin Booker. He never gave him a chance when Devin was trying to go to the rim for a layup. And speaking of the rim, going for the layup, the Suns' strategy was kind of like getting Giannis to go to the free throw line because he was working so well the first couple of games, especially at home. But over the course of the series, his free throw percentage has astronomically improved. And it was pretty much disadvantageous at that point when he just kept making. I think he was 17 for 19 in Game 6. So it was like, okay, you can foul him, but he's going to make it. So they just didn't know what to do. I mentioned that Giannis is the superstar. I kind of want to talk a little bit about his back history. It's a really interesting story. So, as you know, he's the Greek Freak because he's from Greece. He was born in Athens, Greece, which I've actually visited. It's a very, very, very interesting city. Lots of history involved with it. And he's a son with his three brothers to Nigerian immigrants. His parents had trouble holding a job due to their legal status, and him and his brothers had to sell watches on the streets to help provide for their family. As a teenager, he avoided going out at night in fear of being attacked by a neo-Nazi gang in his city. Over the course of time, as he got bigger, a Greek amateur basketball coach noticed Giannis and his brothers, and they introduced him to the game of basketball, essentially. Over the course of time, he got noticed by the NBA and became a first-round pick. This is a very inspiring story, because it's inspiring because he came from a humble beginning. He gets drafted by this city, and there was a time where there was this couple in Milwaukee. They had to give him a ride because he had enough money to get a cab in his first month with the team. And he was loyal to the city, despite others telling him he needs to go to a large market team to win a championship or be somebody in the league. And before Giannis was on the Bucks, the team itself was worth $300 million. Now it's worth over $1.6 billion. So him and these players like Chris Middleton that got drafted there, they made it an attractive place now, in my opinion. I think players are going to realize it's possible to win championships at the place you got drafted at. And they'll probably be more reluctant to stay with their team and try to find solutions with the front office to kind of build around, whether it's from the draft or whether it's trying to drafting superstars. But even though they proved that you don't need to get big free agents to come in and win a championship, because their two best players within the Bucks were drafted. So it's kind of cool in my opinion. I like to say that Kevin Durant will be like the face of the league once LeBron retires, but right now it's just looking like Giannis, and it makes sense. I mean, he's just unstoppable force. I'm not sure who can stop him if he continues to improve his game, especially his shooting game. And speaking of the future of the league, I kind of want to talk about Chris Paul's future. Fortunately, it's kind of looking small for him to win a championship before he retires. This is his 16th year, and he's getting to that age where he has to think about retirement. I have a feeling he'll probably stay with the Suns at least one more year and just be in the league overall for no more than 3 years. To me, I think he's kind of submitted himself as an all-time great. He's an all-time great, in my opinion, at the point guard level. He's not an all-time great basketball player, but at the point guard, he kind of stayed true to what he is. He is a true point guard. He's not like Steph Curry where he can shoot threes at any point, but he knows how to facilitate the game and just control the tempo. And he plays a presence even outside the court. I think he's the president of the Players Association, so it's kind of cool to see him contribute on the court and off the court. He may never win a championship, but it's still great to see what he's done to teams like OKC and Suns in just one season, bringing them to the playoffs essentially when people have doubted these teams wouldn't make it. Since we're still on the topic of basketball and one of the biggest sporting events in the world is on right now, let's talk about Team USA. So today is Sunday the 25th, and Team USA had their first loss to France in the preliminaries. And it's Team USA's first loss since 2004, which is a 25-game win streak that's been broken. I'm sorry, I had to take a sip of my drink. This drink is actually not too bad. Okay, enough of that. Okay, so I personally did not watch the game, but I hate to be the stat guy, but I read the stats, but I did watch a little bit of highlights. So don't critique me too hard if I'm a little off, but I'll try my best to kind of give you a clear picture. So the men's team had a strong first half, but they had a very weak third quarter where they were losing. Where Team France had 25 points while US only put up 11, and they just didn't really come back from that deficit in the fourth quarter. Team France had Boston Celtics shooting guard Evan Fournier with a 28-point performance, and then Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz was on the team. He put up 14 points and 9 rebounds. So those were kind of the two stars of the game that are in the NBA. And I kind of want to look at and see, just kind of give you a rundown of what who was on Team USA. You have Zach LaVine from the Bulls, who put up 8 points. Damian Lillard from the Portland Trailblazers, he put up 11. Kevin Durant put up 10. Chris Middleton didn't get any points. Jason Tatum was there. JaVale McGee, Drew Holiday. And you got Devin Booker. So those are kind of the main guys on Team USA. And one thing to note is Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, and Devin Booker essentially showed up the night before the game, kind of almost with no preparation with their teammates. And the reason why is because they were still in the U.S. Competing in the finals. And to me, it seemed like overall as a team, their shooting wasn't bad. It's just a couple key players that were in a shooting slump, notably Kevin Durant, Dame, and Tatum. And they also just didn't seem to be playing as a cohesive unit. Team France had some easy points in the rim and even had some cool assisted points. They look like they just practiced more as a team versus how much the Team USA practiced. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the team wasn't full until the night before. And that's okay. I understand that. The U.S. has kind of been the basketball country of the world. And the rest of the world is now starting to catch up to it. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, Giannis was the MVP and could be the face of the league, and he's not American. He's from Greece. And you got Luka Doncic. He's from Europe, and he could be a superstar too. So it's very noticeable that a quarter of the league is international, and these international players are actually competitive with the U.S.-born players. And it's really simple because there's not many blowout games that are happening in these Olympic games that we usually see with Team USA. Greg Popovich is the head coach for Team USA. He has been the head coach for many games, and I think he'll get the job done, and U.S. will continue to advance. I think U.S. will play better the next couple games against Iran and the Czech Republic, but they just need to learn to be a basketball team instead of superstar basketball players on a team. Regardless of that, it's just they're still the best players in the world. However, if they lose these next 2 games, they can essentially just say goodbye to the Olympics. And ESPN is going to make big headlines about that kind of loss. And speaking of the Olympics, I kind of want to let you guys know that I'm going to try my best to do some Olympic game coverage for these next couple episodes. So I want to definitely touch up on kind of like track, men's, women's track, because track is my sport and I kind of understand it better and can follow it easier. So I'll be covering like the 400, the 800, 1500, the 5K, and the 10K. So essentially the middle and long distance races. And I'll try my best to stay I'll try my best to stay on top of basketball as well. And one thing I want to talk about is kind of like a little controversial with the Olympics is that Japanese citizens, they're actually not in favor of the Olympics. In April, there was a public poll where 80% of the citizens say they did not want the Olympics to happen. Now that it's in a state of emergency, no crowds, and another wave, people are wondering what's the point of this. So I think their concern is caused by the fear of COVID spread since they went to a state of emergency, and they can't even watch the Olympics. So they feel like they're kind of disrespected. Like this is being pushed by their government as a way to showcase their country can do it. They're a great country to the rest of the world, and then whether it's COVID or not, they can host the biggest sporting event in history. It's unfortunate that it's at the expense of the Japanese people, the people of the country. And I feel like Eastern culture, they value respect a little bit more than Western culture like the U.S., and they simply feel disrespected, and they're strongly against the Olympics, that their government said, screw you guys, we're going to just do this, and they're being hypocritical about it because they were so adamant of COVID lockdown, and they said, it's fine, we'll let it slide because it's the Olympics. And I don't think, in terms of the solution, I just don't think all of the sporting events need to be in Japan for this sort of scenario. The country does well of containing the pandemic, but this is still a slap in the face to the people. The game should be broken out to other parts of the world. because in normal circumstances, this is a very inefficient strategy, but this can be an exception because of the pandemic. The Olympics is about bringing countries together, not only to compete but to unite. Why not work together to find a solution where everybody can be part of that, and have one country host the track games, another country host the water games, tennis, basketball, etc. I understand money's involved, but it shouldn't be the expense of the people that represent your country outside of the court or field. Let's transition over to college football. I love college football. It's probably my favorite sports subject to cover. I watch it very thoroughly, and I follow so many teams, and it's just a lot of fun. It's exciting. So the big headline in college football is Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC conference. I think this is good and bad for both teams. Oklahoma and Texas will have probably a few more losses on their resume for the next couple of seasons, and they may not see the title game for a while. This is good because this allows kind of higher revenue opportunities because of how many fans are tuned into the SEC conference. This will also help improve the recruiting for University of Texas. Players will be playing high-caliber teams that will essentially help their draft stock in the future when they go into the NFL. Parents of these top recruited states like Texas, Georgia, and Florida will not have to travel so far to see their kids play, knowing that they'll be just playing in their region. So Texas won't have to tell them, like, oh, not to worry, you can definitely watch your son play in Iowa, even though you live in Florida. That's probably not attractive to them. This is probably good for the players that want to participate in NIL. There's plenty of opportunities for them to kind of showcase their brand, and that's because the SEC is the most well-known conference of the Power 5 conferences. I mentioned that Oklahoma and Texas will not be seeing a conference title game for a bit, but doesn't mean their chances of making the college playoffs will diminish, particularly for Oklahoma. The playoff committee may extend the playoff to a 12-team bracket. So if Oklahoma were to have 2 or even 3 losses, they could still earn a spot in the playoffs. So I think coaches like Lincoln Riley aren't too worried about that. And one thing I kind of didn't put in my notes is that, like, people like to say Oklahoma gets blown out every time they go to the college playoffs, but you have to think these teams have a week or sometimes 2 weeks to prepare for Oklahoma. I'm really curious if these SEC teams can be prepared to play them within like a 5 or 6 day window, right after they just got done with the game, to have time to prepare for them in the next week's game. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. This shift could be bad for other conferences. They could lose on revenue, especially the Big 12. The Big 12 will most likely have to fill the spots that are vacant now. If not, I think they should just break it up and send these teams to other conferences that make sense geographically. I definitely would not mind seeing like Iowa State join the Big Ten West. I could watch Iowa State play in the state of Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. I live in Chicago, and Chicago is kind of the central location for all these states. So it'd be so easy to see an Iowa State game, because for me, if I want to go to an Iowa State game at home, I have to go 6-7 hours out of the way. It's not fun, believe me. So I'm excited for that if Iowa State were to join the Big Ten West. This change could cause like a domino effect where other conferences outside the SEC will make changes within their structure of teams. Honestly, I would prefer the conferences to be divided by region. Geographically, it makes sense. It's easier for fans to catch closer games. And this would give smaller conference schools a chance to build exposure and revenue. Let's kind of take a quick break. And when I get back, I want to talk about some second-year breakouts to look out for in the NFL. So let's see what's up. Telling you, man, lemonade and Sprite, that's the move. Now that we're back from our quick break, let's talk about some second-year NFL players that could have potential breakouts. And before we get to that, I do want to say that there are some rookies you want to watch out for as well. I just want to name a few. We got Tevin Jenkins from the Chicago Bears, Trey Sermon from the 49ers, Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins, Chuba Hubbard, who I believe is in the Carolina Panthers, but excuse me if I'm wrong, Ian Book from New Orleans Saints, and Kellen Mond from the Vikings. So look out for those rookies. So let's go on to the second years. I'm going to start with Tua Tagovailoa. Tua now has a stronger team built around him, and having one of his former teammates from Alabama, Jalen Waddle, will help him build his confidence and comfortability if he already has that strong chemistry with him. People are quick to kind of rule him out because of his underwhelming rookie year, but he has said he was just not fully prepared, and that's okay to admit that. At least he's aware of that, and he knows what to do to help. It just doesn't help that he just came straight out of surgery right before he started, and I think we can expect a new Tua now that the team has progressed even further with some great draft picks. Another player we should watch out for is one of my personal favorites, Jonathan Taylor, from the Indianapolis Colts. Here it is. Jonathan Taylor is plain and simple. He's the truth. He's probably one of the greatest college running backs of all time. He's at least the greatest one I've seen. He's progressed so quickly in the last half of his rookie season. To put in perspective, in the first half of the 2020 season, he averaged 52 yards per game and 4 total TDs. He's a running back, in case I didn't tell you. Last half, he had 106 yards per game and 8 total TDs. He nearly doubled his production within a course of half a season. It's crazy. He is exactly where he needs to be at. Not to mention, he fixed something that he really struggled in college, which was securing the ball. In the 2020 season, he only fumbled it one time. So either way, he's definitely getting better and better. And with Anthony Miller out of the picture, I want to say we should look out for Darnell Mooney, who will likely have more targets and kind of more opportunity to show off his speed. Darnell Mooney is a wide receiver from the Chicago Bears. Another person to look out for is Clyde Edwards-Helaire from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's also a running back. Helaire had some glimpses of success, especially in the opening game against the Texans, and then a few snaps in the Super Bowl. I saw some of that fire. He's a little streaky, not very consistent, but with the reloaded offensive line from the Chiefs, his production could bump up in the run game and even the slot pass game. Jeff Okudah makes this list. Jeff Okudah plays for the Detroit Lions. The Lions, their defense was a mess, and it definitely did not help Jeff find success at all. But under a new coaching staff, we can definitely see him being utilized differently under a new defensive coordinator, who is Aaron Glenn, and Glenn's new system. A system that could have Jeff featured in various coverages rather than just a cover one defense that he was struggling with the previous coordinator and coach. And another person that makes my list is Mekhi Becton. Becton is an offensive lineman for the New York Jets, and he recently posted a Twitter video or a social media video of him just being more lean now. He has a leaner frame, and him being able to control his weight will help him stay healthy while maintaining his elite strength. Injuries last season pretty much slowed him down. When he was playing, he could definitely produce. Last season, he was ranked 19th out of 38 qualifying left tackles despite battling these injuries. So him staying healthy will be huge for the New York Jets for this upcoming season, which I think they'll have a great year versus 2020 with new coaches and a new quarterback and new everything essentially. Let's kind of finish off with my movie review of the Space Jam movie. Let's kind of say what I like about it, what I dislike about what it's about, and kind of what are the themes that are in the movie. So kind of a brief summary of what the movie is. LeBron James, NBA basketball player, gets trapped in a virtual world with his son, and he has to team up with Bugs to form a super team to defeat the main villain of the movie, Algorithm. He's essentially a computer algorithm in this virtual world. and he has to beat Algae in a basketball game. I like the movie because they highlighted a lot of other movies. For those who don't know, Looney Tunes is owned by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers owns millions of movies over the course of time. And they had and they're able to have scenes and characters that are in their movies, in the actual Space Jam movie. So that was kind of a little nostalgic in my opinion, such as like they had some DC heroes. They had like the old Superman, Batman animated movie scene in the movie, and it was kind of cool to see that. I do think LeBron's a pretty good actor. He's kind of over the top sometimes, but at least he's not like distracting with how bad his acting is. And now, if you get past the first 15 minutes, they don't make the movie just about him. It kind of transitions more to the son and then the Looney Tune characters after the first 15 minutes. It's kind of like showing LeBron's progression when he was a kid to, being the superstar that he is. I like the animation. It was good. I just didn't like some of the CGI animation, the Looney Tunes characters when they were in in some other dimension that Algae put them in. I like the references to the first Space Jam, and that it didn't try to mimic the entire movie. It was pretty self-aware that people were going to criticize them if they were exactly what Space Jam 1 was about. Some things I didn't like about the Space Jam movie was like there's some bad makeup designs in some of the background characters. There's references to Pennywise the clown from It, and then the Night King from Game of Thrones. It was just kind of distracting. I couldn't stop looking at how bad that they looked. Yeah, I guess another thing I didn't like with the movie was probably, like some things some kind of things in the plot just didn't make sense. But that's okay. I'll kind of let it slide. Let's kind of talk about the themes involved with the movie. And the main one I got out of it was parents got to let their kids be their own individual. Parents shouldn't be pushing their own aspirations and dreams into their children. If a kid likes something and they want to take it seriously, parents should be supportive and provide the guidance to help them succeed and be the best version of themselves. And the same applies to the game the basketball game that the Looney Tunes and LeBron play in. They play a version of basketball that's completely different from what we play in the real world, and it required the Looney Tunes, the characters, to be themselves instead of playing like LeBron to win the game. Even though I'm giving an in-depth analysis of what I thought of this movie, at the end of the day, this movie is made for kids. You should come into it as if you're a kid watching it, just like when we were kids watching the Space Jam 1 movie. I did, and I ended up enjoying it. Sure, I'm not gonna say this movie deserves an Oscar, but I enjoyed it. It was fine, and if you're trying to nitpick it, you're probably not gonna like it. And the same applies with any movie you essentially watch. Well, that wraps up today's show. A pretty smooth show today. I'm sorry if I seem kind of a little mellowed out. I'm actually kind of bummed. I forgot this USB cord that I use to connect my camera to my computer. And what it essentially does is it allows my footage to go to my computer so I can start editing, but I forgot it at work. So the show is going to be delayed a little bit. So I'm a little bummed, but it's all right. It'll still be live by the time you watch this. Hopefully none of the things I say is outdated, but I don't think it will. And kind of speaking of, I didn't want to talk about the Aaron Rodgers situation as I normally do, because you know me, I'm a big fanboy over here. Mainly because I'm kind of getting a little tired of it. It's kind of stressful to see what's on Twitter, and then you have to try to act like a detective to figure out what certain tweets or posts mean. An example, the Last Dance picture that Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers posted. There's rumors that it might be their last go round, and they're going to go for the Super Bowl, and then they're going to go their separate ways with the Packers. It probably doesn't mean it at all, or it does mean it at all. Either way, I want to wait until another episode, because we're kind of this point where mandatory training camp is happening this week, and I don't want to go in this whole spiel and then some news drops like Aaron Rodgers shows up to training camp, we're back on pace, or Aaron Rodgers doesn't show up to training camp, he's going to be fined. and then my story or my analysis on what's going on just sounds silly. I want a full detail and a confirmation of what's going to happen. That way I can give a full analysis and prediction of what this season is going to be like. Either way, as a Packers fan, we'll move on and we'll see what Jordan Love has to offer along with Blake Bortles. So we'll see how that turns out. As an Aaron Rodgers fan, I just want him to play the game. I want him to I want to play the game and enjoy while doing it, or just doing what he enjoys doing it. It may be him not playing the game, but either way, I support what he does. Yep. So that's the end of today's show. Thanks to everyone that's watched today. I'm excited for what's coming up. I have a few guests lined up, and it's gonna be great. Some reoccurring guests, some new guests, and maybe some more skits. I want to do some little funny skits like in the beginning. Yeah, sure. It's not a big thing. It's not like a movie production skit, but it was fun to switch things up a little bit. So as always, thank you again for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Every little bit helps. I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care.